For the next stage now, I'm going to need to add a passage of slightly darker tone all down this third of the painting. As you can see from my posterized grayscale, this tone is slightly grayer than the white of his beard, and there's also some further half tones in there going darker again. So we've got grey, darker grey, much darker grey. But overall, this swathe, this band, is paler than the beard and lots of elements like the crown and his brow and his nose. So by going a tone darker, or a couple of degrees darker, that will help me to paint the white of his beard. So what I'm going to do is use a little bit of acrylic gouache. You can also use just plain gouache or watercolour, opaque watercolour white. Whatever opaque white you've got will be fine. The best of them all, I think, will be this acrylic gouache because it's very opaque and it dries really quickly and gives us a strong white. Okay, so pick whatever one you fancy for that. So to start with, I'm going to wet the whole third of the painting. This will involve painting over the beard in places. So to wet it, I'm trying to do it in a sort of rough, scratchy, scattered way so that I won't have a solid line of water. I want it to be easy to sort of dovetail things together. So I'm wetting it like that in a sort of choppy way. I am, however, going to be very careful around the nose and the lips. I don't want to lose them at all. And around the sort of filigree work of this metal crown. It's probably gold. And up into the feathers a little bit. And cutting in there. So once I've done these tight cutting in areas around the detailed parts of the Viking's face, I can then merrily bang in the water once more with a big flat brush to moisten the area. Yes, some of the previous wash pigment might start to now get reactivated by this re-wetting, but that's okay because there's no detail in there. It's just a mass, it's just a passage of colour. So I'm moistening this and flicking it and trailing it like that, as if I was doing invisible strands of beard like that, so that when I come to painting it in, it'll be easier to blend. Okay, so a darker tone. Right, well, what I'm going to do is pick up the cobalt teal blue that I had initially, and then pick up some lunar blue as well. There's a little bit of raw umber on there, that's okay. Bit of raw umber is accidentally getting mixed into that, but it's quite weak, so that's alright. Let's try out this tone now on a piece of paper. I'm painting it right close to the edge of the paper, so when I hold it by my painting I can see if it's a match. Yeah, it's not a bad match to some of the other areas with similar colour in there. I might add a bit of French ultramarine blue to it, because the French ultramarine blue is the colour that I've used a lot of for the feathered cape. and just drop a few more brush strokes, and then I'm going to tilt it and let it run just for a bit more texture and interest, and to give it that loose, watery, icy, glacial look, because we are in the Nordic lands and I want some glacier, freezing cold feeling here with some drama. Okay, so now we've got to start lifting out the colour for the beard. So I'm going to zoom in on the beard here, okay, and the whiskers. So there is a cloud of white beard, moustache there. See how white that is? And then it goes a bit greyer and then much greyer, and there are some white coils, twists in the beard. Okay, so I've only got to indicate a couple of those, right? So let me zoom in a bit more on here. So looking at my grayscales, it's coming out. This is a Matthew Palmer lift out brush, but any small, flat, thin brush will do. You've got to keep rinsing and drying your brush after each lift, so that you can keep getting back to the white of the paper. And you want to do this quickly so that the paint doesn't sink in and get comfy in the paper too much, okay? Work quickly. And luckily, because we wet the whole area first before we even put in colour, it's nice and moist, and so the paper is more than happy to give up the paint when you're lifting it out, okay? I'm going to make some more coil shapes like that. You might have to do them once or twice for them to really pop. There's some lovely big ones down the bottom as well. Try and make them all a bit different. I want his beard to look wild and free. So keep rinsing and wiping and lifting. That's what you got to do. I'm conscious of trying to leave some of the blue paint visible so that it will make the white pop, because without the contrast of the blue paint, the white will lose itself. So it has to be that contrast. It does soak back in, you see. Watercolour is a very active medium. Until the paper is bone dry, until all that water has evaporated and dried in the air of the room in which you're working, it's going to keep on moving. and the particles of paint and pigment will keep on moving about. So you've got to keep on top of it. You can't just walk away and think that one lot of brush strokes will do it. Probably won't if you've given your paper a good wetting. You've got to keep coming back. It's like stemming the tide. It's like trying to stem the tide. Keep working with it. But you do get some beautiful effects then. Let me zoom out and show you how it's looking now. Okay, so you can see you've got that mass of sort of ribbons. See, in the paint. So his beard is visible, but it's still sort of entangling with the what's the word? Entangling with the background, so that it's got some nice anchors. It's free in places and it's got anchors elsewhere. Okay, so I'm going to leave all that dry now, and then what we'll be doing is we're going to be adding some darker grey blue on this side, and then I'll be cutting out some more highlights in that. But I wanted to do the sort of the background and the beard first, then we'll do the body and the shoulder of his torso with the beard next. So leave all that dry now. Okay, for the next section now, I've turned the painting upside down because I find it easier to work top to bottom, and I'm going to be working this sort of slither of the painting in between the beard coils and the front of his cape here. Okay, so I'm going to be putting a dark passage all up here and then carving out some white tendrils of the beard. So again, to do that, I'm going to go back into some more French ultramarine blue. So I need to match this with the cape and the sort of front colour. The front colour was more cobalt teal in it, and the cape sort of was more French ultramarine blue with a little bit of burnt umber in it. Okay, so sort of a darkish blue. So I'm going to get this in. You can see that coming. Look at me just zoom in a bit. You can see that I'm doing here. And cut it in. And it goes up sort of to about here. And again, I want that edge to be sort of loose. And then take some of this paint over a bit. Again, so starting to make curves, curved shapes, curved brush strokes. And then I'm going to rinse my brush, get all that paint off, wash it in a clear jug of clean water, flick it, and then I'm going to brush up into it and wiggling it so that it softens all those edges even further. See, so I've got like a cloudy soft side now. Rinse my brush again, flick it again, and soften all that away. Rinse my brush again. This time I'm going to wipe it on a cloth, and I'm going to start now to do curves like that to lift out some colour. So again, big curves. They can curve over the feathers a bit. I'll be switching to a smaller brush soon. Just want to get some of these big ones done. Cut down into that as if the beard is coming down from his cheek, you know, and wrapping over some of the feathers we painted earlier on. Don't be afraid to overlap. So that the hair is bursting out, you know, from his face over onto the feathers. Got to work quickly again so that it doesn't dry too quickly. Let's have some different ones going in different direction. Remembering you need to rinse and wipe after more or less every curl that you do, because you'll be picking up a ton of pigment and you want that to be a clean brush when you're picking paint up. Right, let's see how that's looking now, the right way round. Okay, so we've got this area now of sort of strands. I'm going to make some much bigger passages now. Coming down, say from his chin, there's quite a big, and I'm pressing the brush really hard in. I'm going to switch to my other Matthew Palmer brush because it's a bit more robust and lifts out more punchily because it's smaller and more square than my big brush that I was just using there. So I've got to work quick now. Right, at this point as well, I'm going to get my acrylic gouache paint. Squeeze some into a separate palette from my watercolour palette because this stuff will wreck all your watercolour paints because it'll make them all opaque. So I'm using this now to get some much stronger and defined whites in. While I've still got a bit of moisture in the paper, still has a bit of a softer edge. And also I wanted a few more harder And then let's play these out a bit. And again, trying to make them as natural as possible, going over some of the feathers that we painted before. Just a nice overlap. Very delicately done. And the face. And on his cheek. Sorry, that was off camera there. I was just doing some very fine ones on his moustache. And under his chin as well. I'm adding more water to keep it moist and fluid to get those fine sort of tendrils. Starting to build there now. Right, at the back of his head as well, there's quite a lot of coiling of hair, and again I'm going to let some of the previous wash that was showing come through. And then really press the white home. To have it cascading. Back of his head. You just zoom out a little bit now. So that's how it's starting to look now. A lot more sort of hair detail now. I'm going to go in here and put again the same white. Yeah, it's a nice white curve there. This white, I'm going to paint over my pencil lines. And his hair is sort of very blonde in this area. White blonde, grey, whatever you want to call it. Leaving some of the previous wash showing through, and I will be doing some black feathers on that area there, which will show up the white hair even more in a little while. But for now, let's just get the white on, trying to create some locks of hair. And just artistic license, the hair at the back of his head in the picture is actually quite dark, but I'm going to have it pale because the black feathers, the sort of raven feathers, will make his hair show up better. It'll be blonde, it'll be white or grey. Which will be a dramatic contrast then to the raven feathers. Right, so he's got a little bit of eyebrow hair there. Again. Okay, now under the chin, under the lower lip, need to get a bit more work in there. Right, happy with that now. Okay, so I think that's it for the hair in the whole painting. Yeah, I might just do a few little wild sort of flicks. There. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there. Let's just check. There might be a couple more areas where I just want a nice white highlight, like there. And maybe here. And taper it away. Right, I'm going to leave all that dry now, and in the jug that I've just rinsed that white acrylic gouache, I've only used one jug for the rinsing of the white acrylic gouache paint. I'm going to go and empty that in my bathroom now, because otherwise it'll contaminate all my other brushes and paints. So I'm just going to rinse it right out and make sure all the gouache is gone, because it's acrylic gouache, it dries rock hard, and I don't want that on my watercolour brushes. So in the next section I'm going to start work on this crown, and it's going to be a mixture of sort of the skin tone colour and maybe a little hint more of a yellowish colour, or a bit of orange maybe, to try and give an idea of like coppery, goldy copper colour, a sort of antique gold for this head piece. Right, now my palette is in a right royal mess because I did a demonstration at a local art society last week and it's very mucky. So I'm going to give it all a bit of a spray just to re-moisten, reactivate my paints in my wells. Got a little spray bottle, it's got fine mist. And I'm just going to go off camera while I clean this up. Right, so I've got a little size 4 round brush. I'm going to pick up some raw umber, quite an amount of this, so I've got enough to do the whole crown. Some raw umber, a little bit of quinacridone rose, bit of Perignon orange or any bright, oh no, it's gone too orangey now. Right, I'll add some more yellow into that. Yeah, that's still way too peachy, way too bright. Right, I'm going to add some more water to that now, and a bit more yellow, and then neutralise that sort of gold colour I've got now with a little bit of French ultramarine. That just knocks it back a little bit, tiny bit more. Forensic amount of French ultramarine, just take some off the blob and then put it onto the palette and then add it. Yeah, that's a bit more subtle. That's like an old gold colour, hopefully. Yeah, okay. So let's get this on. So again, the light is coming from the left hand side. Yeah, so shadows will be all on the right. On the right or underneath the shapes of this crown, you know, underneath the filigree shapes. Now the stone in there is it's going to be a sort of mix of the colours of the background, this sort of lunar blue, cold blue, grade blue. So that's a little bit of detail for the crown, not much. And there's also some sort of darker hair pieces in amongst this area. So there's a darker piece in the middle there, and there, and under here. Suck some of that off. And I'm going to take some strokes of this crown colour into the hair as well, because there's a few little shadows that curve like that, just to give the texture of his hair a bit more prominence. Because the feathers, which are going to be very dark, will make his hair look very pale, which it is. It's very pale hair. So just put a bit of that in there. Okay. Right, underneath some of this metal work here, there's a bit of the same sort of colour. Just finishes off that metal piece there. And this crown has got like a sort of arm that goes around his temple, behind his ear, and to the back of his head. That's how he's holding on. So that's just the sort of visual connector there. Right, let that dry now because I want to paint the stone. Yes, and I think we'll have a little bit of the Sleeping Beauty paint or any turquoise that you've got, and a tiny bit of lunar blue. If you haven't got lunar blue, you can just literally add a little bit of, dare I say it, because I don't like using black, but black to a turquoise, and that will give us a similar colour. So here's the stone going on. I'm not going to paint it all the way up because there are some shards of light landing in it. So I'm going to use a thirsty brush to suck down in. Rinse my brush, flick my brush, and it's slightly moist, but it's just going to give me a bit more light on this left hand side. Actually, I'm going to use a smaller flat brush. See that one there? That's tiny. Moisten it and then dry it on a cloth, and let's cut down because the light is striking it on the left hand side. Come down a bit more. I want it to come down like a third of it be light and 2/3 of it be dark. I don't like to have things half and half. Even if it was half and half, it looks a bit unnatural. Things look better when they're asymmetrical. Now let's go straight back in and pick up with a practically dry brush some Lunar Blue. Tiny bit of the dilute mix as well. And let's drop that in because it's much darker down at the base. And on the left hand side, rinse my brush, let that all sort of bleed. That's doing a nice job on its own. Slightly thirsty brush, just drag down in to soften that. Rinse again, soften that edge. Okay, so we've got the stone in there now. Okay, right, zoom in out. Let's get on now with some of these lovely strong feathers that are going to make our hair look very white. So let's pick up some, got the wrong colour now, Sleeping Beauty, French Ultramarine Blue, a lot of this now for these feathers, and then it was Burnt Umber, this dark, very dark blue-grey for the raven's feathers. And I'm going to put some Lunar Blue in that as well. Just going to squirt some more water into that puddle so that it will go a bit further. Right, so I've got my flat brush. This is a 1/4 inch flat brush. Let's get some of these feathers in now. So behind this filigree are the dark feathers. So I want to cut in accurately. That's a little dark ellipse in there as well. So we cut in that metalwork there, and a bit more of the feather there. I'm leaving the vein in the centre of the feather unpainted, leaving it as the white of the paper. So that's the first one gone in. Let's load up. Right, it's the second one now. another feather behind there, just to shape the crown, because this dark will push the pale of the crown forward. Okay, right, now I'm going to put a bit of dark in there, because of course that will be out of the light. As well. This one and this one. This one's a little bit too dark because as I look at my picture, that shape is a little bit too strong and this shape is a little bit too strong. So what I'm going to have to do is to subdue them, because look, when you look at the painting, your eye goes straight there, which is too strong. I want it to be a little bit less demanding on the eye. So in order to do that, I'm going to reactivate all the paint by wetting it with clear water. And reactivate that circle, because that circle is a little bit too strong. I'm only reactivating the dark paint, you know, I'm being as accurate as I can in the reactivation. Rinsing my brush, flicking my brush on the jug. And while I'm here, I'm going to take a few sort of dark lines of that feather colour, just to sort of act as a transition between the dark feather and the white of his hair. But now what I'm going to do is take a piece of tissue and press it on gently. And to take some of that paint off. Yeah, that's a lot less, but I've still got quite a hard edge on some of the ones, so I'm going to need a flat brush now to chip away at those, brush them in again so they're not so those tips of the feathers aren't so harsh. Just brush them away. Rinse my brush, flick my brush to keep it clean, and in fact maybe cut in to it, come from the outside and cut in. That'll reduce the prominence of it. Okay. Right, so what I've got left to do now is some of the feathers here in the foreground. So I'm going to pick up, because this is a slightly different black than the first black I did, I'm going to paint these in. Because they're a slightly different colour, they'll show up a bit more because they are on top of the other feathers. Okay, so it's carry a few more across as well, again for repetition of this tone in the beard. And a little bit under the moustache, and then moisten this brush really well, flick it, and then go back in and soften those shapes off and soften them in. So that they're subdued. And blend them away into the adjacent passages. Still painting the beard in the direction in which it's going. Okay, and I am going to call that finished. So the way I sign my paintings is I have an old ink pen, one of these squishy ink pens, and what I do, let me just move this for a second. Zoom in. I just take a mixer, sort of mixture about that dilution, and rub it all over the nib, and it squishes just about enough paint in there to allow me to write my name. Make sure you really rub it all in and there's enough moisture. And what you can do as well is just do a little bit of a test on a piece of paper to make sure it's going to get it going, you know, get it flowing, so that the ink is flowing. I might need more if it's a little bit dry. So load up again and ensure that that flow like that, so you started, okay? Right, and then I'm going to write my name. Move things out of the way here, sorry. Somewhere clear but not too conspicuous. And that's it. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed doing this portrait with me, and if you subscribe to my channel, please click on the grey bell, because the grey bell means you'll get alerts when I put a new video out, and if you click the grey bell it gives my channel more sort of like kudos, more sort of visibility as well. So thanks ever so much for that, and hope you enjoy painting. And if you'd like to see the finished painting, it'll be on my Art Finder gallery and the link will be in the description. Also links to anything that you might need to paint this along with me will be found in the description.